Do we really know how accurate voting was back in the 1800s? Wouldn't it have been incredibly easy to mess with votes back then? It was very easy and very common. Large cities often had a political machine that was part political party, part organized crime. And that made sure its people always won, and those machines were not always democratic. The whole GOP doesn't do cities thing is a modern-day event. Google Tammany Hall. I mean, to some extent, but also remember that there were way fewer votes back then. Women couldn't vote, and there were just way fewer people in general. Also, people often had to travel overnight to their polling place, so they were often there during the time it was being counted and had nothing else to do but keep tabs on things and drink, I guess. Also, there were way fewer cops back then. So if you got caught messing with some burly farmer's or miner's ballot, there was a good chance they would beat you until your bones were nothing but splinters and/or pop your eyeballs out of your skull and/or some other horrible thing, and then just skip town, because the chances of getting caught after he left town were very low. So there were certainly some additional checks on vote rigging back then as well. Many of the earliest US elections would barely count as democratic by today's standards. In the 1800 election, for example, only 6 of the 16 states had any sort of popular vote, and it ended up in an electoral tie, resulting in a contingent election in the House. Also, voting wasn't even by secret ballot until the 1890s. So that's all to say, yeah, incredibly easy. Yes, it was. There were all kinds of shenanigans and violence on election days too. We were not a first world country back then. It was easy to do up until at least mid-19s. By modern standards, it was incredibly easy. Of course, cheating can only go so far until people start asking uncomfortable questions, which kept things okay. By 1800 standards, cheating has been always occurred in elections. It is nothing new. What is new is the power of the government. In the 1800s, government had little to no impact on daily life. Now it impacts us multiple times a day, so cheating is more important now as an issue. Vote counts were pretty accurate once the votes were cast. They weren't even secret most of the time, for one thing, until nearly the 20th century. You either said who you voted for out loud, or handed over a ticket with the names of candidates all from the same party, and that was your vote. The campaigns would have monitors keeping a live count. The shenanigans usually came trying to get people to vote. Campaigns would buy voters drinks and meals, literally rope people in, and hand them their candidate's ticket to give to the election officials. As the day wore on, campaigns would have kept count the whole time, and they knew exactly how many men they needed to entice to the polls. Voting was a mess and really does not even compare to today. Much of the voting was straight party ticket. You only really cast one vote. There was no official ballot. Parties would hand out slips to use. Parties even misrepresented what the ballots were, for most many could not even read, using pictures, symbols, or outright lying about what the ballot was. This does not even go into voter intimidation and other tactics used. We've been spending the recent decades finding ways to protect the integrity of the vote, trying to eliminate every shenanigan that has come before. Just as safety regulations are written in blood, so all our polling requirements and procedures spring from past injustices. It's a very British answer, but I feel no discussion on corrupt electioneering would be complete without recommending you take a look at Blackadder S3E1 Dish Dishonesty. It was always shown in history classes in school as a comedy take on how rotten boroughs used to work. We don't have rotten boroughs anymore, of course, but there's plenty of elements that are recognizable in today's elections too. The movie Gangs of New York had some great takes on elections. Good movie overall. Great clip. https://youtube.bep56ok2 feature = share. Yes, but also there was massive corruption. On the plus side were no voting machines, and paper can't be hacked by a Russian child with a 50 laptop. For some reason, not many people seem to know about the 1876 election that was stolen from Samuel Tilden. Voting shenanigans have always been a problem. Check out the highly controversial election of Rutherford B. Hayes, for example. That was very much the Tammany Hall scene in NY in the 19th century. Locally, as recently as the 1960s, there was heavy corruption. It's how Jimmy Carter won his first state Senate seat, not by being corrupt, but by proving the other guy's corruption disrupted his lawful nomination. Gangs of NY had a scene about it. Still is. Why would it be easy?